Candy, the Diana Echo. Paris, August 31st, 1997. They called him Candy, short for Candide, though no one remembered why. A scrawny French-Italian with a crooked smile and the lean, hungry look of someone who never stopped chasing light. On the night it happened, or didn't happen, he stood in the dim passage of the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, camera in hand, breath fogging the lens. He hesitated. The Mercedes-Benz S280 sped past in a whisper of wind and rubber, pursued by flashing headlights. In that heartbeat, Candy did what no one else did. He didn't press the shutter, no flash, no freeze frame of Diana's last seconds. Just breath and instinct and something he couldn't name. The car swerved, but the flash didn't blind the driver. The pillar didn't claim her. The world blinked and history swerved. Princess Diana survived. In the weeks that followed, the tabloids tried to make sense of it. Broken ribs, a fractured arm, some internal bleeding, but alive. More than that, awake, alert, seared with a clarity that survival sometimes grants. She spoke softly from her hospital bed about second chances and the fragility of life. Then she vanished from the media, withdrawing into silence for 9 months. What emerged was not the same woman. London, 1998. When Diana returned to public life, her first appearance was not a gala or charity ball. It was a quiet arrival in Belfast. Without warning or fanfare, she walked the Shankill Road. Her heels clicked on pavement, still stained by conflict. Loyalists watched from windows. Republicans glared from alleys. She walked between them with bare hands and no security. A single camera crew followed. By the time she left Ireland 3 weeks later, the first Interfaith Youth Summit was scheduled in Derry. The Good Friday Agreement, signed that April, gained new traction, and whispers followed that Diana's intervention had softened the edges of mistrust between parties. Children began to draw peace doves with blonde hair and tiaras in their school books. Nairobi, 1999. She flew to Kenya next. Cameras caught her walking barefoot through refugee camps. She hugged mothers dying of AIDS. She kissed their children. She refused the press pool, insisted on traveling with doctors. Over the next 5 years, the Diana clinics began to appear. First in Mombasa, then Kigali, Dakar, Johannesburg. Funded not by royal coffers, but by something larger, the will of the people. Millions donated, millions followed. By 2004, she was speaking at the United Nations. By 2008, she was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Candy followed it all from a flat in Montmartre. He watched her rise in grainy television broadcasts and smeared magazine covers, his camera gathering dust. He never worked again. Something about that night hollowed him out. He became the ghost who had not taken the photo. The moment haunted him, but it also fed him. She was alive, because of him. Maybe. And then 25 years later, the world began to forget. Paris, 2022. It started with the magazines. Candy was sorting old stacks, preparing for winter. The apartment smelled of mildew and black coffee. Dust choked the corners like ghosts. He flipped through a Paris match from 1998. Diana's face was there, smiling, triumphant, on a rooftop in Belfast. The next day, the cover was blank. Not empty, just generic. A story about elections. No Diana. He blinked, ran his hands over the smooth surface, and fished the matching clipping from his scrapbook. Gone. The photo wasn't just missing, it was never there. He checked the tape next. A brittle VHS labeled Diana, Nairobi 2000. When he played it, the tape hissed. The screen showed crowds, tents, heat lines dancing across the savannah. But Diana was a ghost in the frame. Blurred, distant, vanishing when the camera moved. Each time he tried to pause on her, the tape fuzzed to static. He called Claude, an old colleague from the agency days. "She's gone," Candy said. "The tapes, the magazines. I swear." Claude laughed. "You still chasing phantoms, mon vieux? Diana died in that tunnel. Everyone knows." "No," Candy whispered. "I was there." "You were there, and you didn't get the shot. I saved her." A long pause, then the line clicked dead. That night, Candy dreamed of pillars collapsing backward, metal unbending, screams reversing into silence. When he woke, he found something strange on the floor, a Polaroid. It showed Diana, unmistakably alive, standing in a field of red earth. Candy himself was in the corner of the frame, younger, confused. He had no memory of the photo. There was writing on the back, "Do not let them take her twice." The echoes begin. He hunted the city. He wandered flea markets, pawn shops, old bookstores. He searched for anything, photos, tapes, diaries. Every so often, he found something. A forgotten diary with an entry dated 2002. Saw Diana on TV, spoke about Angola. I cried another reel of Super 8 film labeled simply Echo. He watched it in the basement of an old cinema. It showed Diana, older now, speaking to a crowd in Sarajevo, her voice muffled, the film fluttering at the edges. But there, real, tangible, he wasn't alone. Others came to the basement, a librarian from Berlin who remembered reading Diana's address at the Reichstag, a Kenyan journalist who had photographs from a clinic opening in Kisumu, a student from Belfast who swore her father shook Diana's hand after a peace rally in 1999. None of their proofs lasted. Photos faded, journals rewrote themselves, videos blanked. "We call it the echo," the librarian said, "a resonance from a reality that once was. A reality that should be," Candy muttered. They pinned the fragments on a corkboard in the cinema. Photos, scribbles, artifacts. Every time a piece disappeared, another would surface. Sometimes old, sometimes recent, sometimes impossible. One day, a cassette tape arrived in the mail. No return address, just a note. "Play it where she almost died." The tunnel. It was early morning when Candy descended into the Pont de l'Alma. He carried an old Walkman and the tape. The tunnel was busy, traffic roaring past. But he walked to the spot where he had stood all those years ago. He pressed play. The tape hissed, then, "This is Diana. If you're hearing this, I'm gone, not dead, erased." Candy froze. Someone is rewriting us, a force that hates change, that needs the world as it was. It's eating the future, unwinding it. And you, if you're listening, you were the point of divergence. The sound cracked, warbled. You hesitated. You gave me time. You gave the world hope. But now it wants to restore the original line. "I don't know how much longer I have." She paused. "Keep the echo alive." The tape melted into static. Paris, late 2022. The day after Candy played the tape, the walls of his apartment started to sweat. Not with water, but with images. Ghostly after images burned into the paint, the wallpaper, the mirrors. Faint outlines of Diana walking through sand, kneeling beside graves, holding a baby wrapped in tattered cloth. They flickered when he turned his head. When he looked straight on, they vanished. Reality had a wobble now. He moved with caution, half afraid he'd fall through the floor and into one of the timelines echoing behind the walls. In the cinema basement, the others were changing too. The librarian, Elke, spoke in two voices when she read from her notes. The Kenyan journalist Njeri claimed she now remembered two childhoods, one where Diana was a fable and one where Diana held her hand during a measles shot at a Nairobi clinic. The Belfast student, Michael, confessed he no longer knew if his mother was alive. "She was in the photo with Diana, but the photo is gone. And now, I can't reach her." Candy stared at the corkboard. Dozens of pins, threads of red, fading images like wounds. Elke traced the tangle with her fingers. "It's like reality is hemorrhaging, and we're the clots." Candy whispered, "The wound is me." The archive beneath the Seine. Elke had heard rumors of a forgotten film vault beneath Paris. An old Gaumont archive sealed during the war, rediscovered briefly in the 80s, then shuttered. It lay beneath the Seine, accessible only through a maintenance tunnel between metro lines. She believed it might hold original footage, unedited reels that hadn't been overwritten by the shift. If the echo had a memory, it would be there. They broke in on a Tuesday at dawn. 4 of them, Candy, Elke, Njeri, and Michael. They wore masks, carried flashlights, and moved like ghosts through the underbelly of the city. They found the vault under layers of dust and silence. The door groaned open like an old grave. Inside, thousands of canisters, metal shelves, the air thick with the smell of vinegar and mold. Elke held up a light. Reels labeled, Diana, Johannesburg Clinic, 2003. UN address, Geneva, 2005. Sarajevo Peace Garden, 2010. Some were blank, others melted, but a few shimmered even in darkness. They unspooled one reel onto an old editing rig. The film lit the room like fire. There she was, Diana, older, luminous, standing before a crowd of diplomats. Her voice rang clear. True legacy isn't royal. It's human. It's in the lives we heal, the walls we break, the arms we open. Elke wept openly, and Jerry recorded it all. Michael just stared. When the reel ended, the metal canister collapsed into rust in their hands. The footage wouldn't last, nothing did, but Candy smiled. We saw her. That means she's still in us. The fracture. As winter came, more people joined them. Survivors of the alternate world. A violinist from Oslo who played a symphony Diana had commissioned, now lost. A Turkish doctor who remembered Diana helping smuggle vaccines into Syria. A Chilean teacher who recalled a children's book co-written by Diana and Gabriel Garcia Marquez. None of it existed anymore, but they remembered. And the forgetting was accelerating. Whole newspapers vanished. Wikipedia entries blinked out. People forgot they had ever remembered. One by one, the echo holders were disappearing. Literally sometimes. Like a video being scrubbed from tape. Elke vanished in the middle of a conversation. One moment, she was outlining a plan to digitize the remaining footage. The next, her chair was empty, her voice lingering like smoke. Only Candy seemed immune. He began to believe it was because he had caused the fracture, because he had refused to take the photo. Maybe the thing unraveling the world couldn't touch him directly. Maybe he was the fixed point. But then the photographs on his wall began to bleed. Not ink, not blood. Light. Light unspooling from the edges, as though the pictures were being pulled into another timeline. Another truth. And then, so was he. The second shutter. It happened at 2:17 a.m. Candy awoke to find himself back in the tunnel. Not dreaming, not time travel exactly. It was the same place, same air, same moment. The Mercedes speeding past, his hand trembling on the shutter release. Again, he saw it like before. The curve of the car, the blur of the paparazzi behind him, the split-second choice. But this time, something was different. Behind him stood a figure, tall, faceless, draped in static. Its presence throbbed like a migraine. Its limbs flickered in and out of sync with the world. It wasn't human, but it wore the suggestion of one, like a news anchor caught mid-glitch. It whispered, "Balance must return." Candy turned his lens toward the car. For the first time in 25 years, he felt the temptation. Take the shot, blind the driver, restore the original timeline, undo the fracture. His finger hovered. The figure reached for him, but Diana turned and looked out the rear window, straight at him, not afraid, not pleading, knowing. And Candy lowered the camera. The world snapped back like rubber. He was in his apartment again, but something had changed. The red wall where his corkboard had been now stood a wall of light. Not blinding, but luminous. Faint images floated in it. Diana's hands, Diana's words, glimpses of a world that should have been. He reached for it. His hand passed through, not into fire, not into ice, but into memory. And there, inside, he saw the others. Elke, and Jerry, Michael, the violinist, all smiling, all working, all building a world where Diana lived, spoke, healed, where peace moved not like a storm, but like a sunrise. The wall pulsed. Behind him, the city screamed. Sirens wailed. Screens flashed with breaking news, riots, economic collapse, polar ice fractures. The world without her was accelerating into ruin. He understood. This timeline, this uncorrected world, was decaying because it had been forced back into its old shape. But the fracture had happened. The hope had been born, and the echo refused to die. But it needed an anchor, one final piece. The last tape. There was one reel left, unlabeled. He found it in the lining of his old camera bag. It played without a screen, just sound. Diana's voice, aged, tired, but warm. They'll try to undo us, because they fear what we could become. But even if I vanish, I'll echo in everyone who believed we could be more. You saw me. Now, let them see you. The tape burned out. Candy turned to the wall of light and stepped forward. Paris, early 2023. The wall of light in Candy's apartment began to pulse with a rhythm now, as though it were breathing. The air around it was thick, dense, with the sensation of the world bending, shifting, and struggling to remain intact. Diana's face flickered within it, every glance she gave Candy brimming with the quiet force of everything she had become. A symbol, a whisper, a promise. But the wall wasn't just her. It was all the echoes, the traces of a life that might have been and still could be. Candy stood before it, unsure of what was to come next, torn between what he knew and what he didn't want to acknowledge. The images in the light were more than memories now. They were choices, glimpses of a reality that was not simply a past version of the world, but an alternative future, one that could be saved if he acted. But he could also let it slip away, let it fade like so many photographs left out in the sun. A soft buzz hummed beneath his feet. The room was vibrating, or rather he was, tethered to the wall as though reality itself was being rewritten, erased. The city outside screamed, but it didn't matter anymore. What was happening to the world, riots, ecological collapse, economic decay, was already part of the past, and the echo was beginning to pull it into its own orbit. A different path, a path where the timeline bent back, reformed, and perhaps healed. "Let me go," he whispered. But the wall had other plans. The endless corridor, it was as if the apartment dissolved, the walls falling away into a void of light. He was pulled forward, or maybe he moved willingly. Everything seemed distorted, like walking through an old photograph that refused to stay in focus. The world around him was a blurred stretch of moments and faces, fragments of Diana's speeches, the echoes of the children whose lives she had touched, the letters she had written, the people who believed in her. And then, the tunnel. Not the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, but another one. He stood at the threshold of a dark corridor, endless in length, twisting in shapes he couldn't quite define. At the far end, a flicker of light, a presence that felt alive. Candy moved forward, his breath shallow. It was a long walk. Time didn't make sense. He could hear the faintest whispers, Diana's voice calling his name, mingled with other voices, far away, almost indistinguishable. Then at the farthest point, he saw her, Diana. She stood at the edge of a well of light, like a sentinel guarding the boundary of worlds. "I knew you would come," she said, her voice like a soft breeze through a summer field. "You always knew, didn't you?" Candy opened his mouth to speak, but the words felt foreign. He had no answers, no certainty, only the knowing that this moment had been coming, pulling him across time in its own way. He nodded, swallowing back a lifetime of guilt, of what-ifs, of one choice that changed everything. "Do you understand what happened?" Diana asked. "I think so," he said, his voice hoarse. "I broke the timeline, and now the world, it's trying to fix itself. And what do you want, Candy? To let it return to how it was?" He closed his eyes. "I don't know if I can let it go back. I can't unsee the things that you did. The hope, the change, the peace." Her gaze softened, and for a moment there was no distance between them. It was as if the world outside didn't matter. The timelines didn't matter, just the truth in that gaze. You were the fracture point, the hinge. But you weren't the only one who made the choice. We all make choices, Candy. You didn't just save me. You made us real. Every moment you kept me alive. You gave the world a chance it didn't deserve. Candy blinked, the weight of her words sinking into him. There had always been a choice, a hesitation. But now, as the world was tearing itself apart, the one thing that remained certain was that his decision had, indeed, changed everything. "Can it be saved?" he asked, the question slipping from his lips like a desperate prayer. The light around them flickered and pulsed. Diana stepped forward, placing her hand on his chest, directly over his heart. The warmth of her touch surged through him, soothing but firm. "It can't be saved without sacrifice, Candy," she said, her eyes locking onto his with a knowing, gentle intensity. "Not unless you let go." He shook his head, panic creeping up his spine. "Let go of what? Of me, of the past, of the echo of a life that could have been." The walls around them cracked and the light brightened, then dimmed. Everything started to unravel again, like fraying fabric. "Let go," Diana whispered once more, stepping back into the light, "or the echo will fade forever." The decision, Candy's mind raced. He thought of the people who had joined him, the forgotten world they carried in their hearts. He thought of the Diana clinics, of the children who were born into peace because of her. He thought of the unseen work she had done in secret, the quiet, world-changing force she had become. He couldn't let that go. He stepped forward, following her into the light. A new beginning. The light swirled and enveloped him completely. The world blurred, then reformed, first in flashes, then slowly into clarity. The apartment was gone. Paris was gone. The tunnel, the darkness, the corridor, they were gone, and so was Diana. Everything she had become, everything they had built together, was nothing now but a fragment, a faint memory, too fragile to touch. But in that quiet, strange silence that followed, there was something else, a new beginning, quietly unfurling. Like the first notes of a song, it was just a whisper, but it was enough. In the distance, a figure walked toward him, outlined by the light. A child, the same child he'd seen in the forgotten photographs, holding out a crumpled, faded photograph of Diana. It wasn't much, but it was real. Candy took the photo and looked up, hearing a voice echo across the vastness of this new world. "Remember, Candy, you are never alone in this." And just like that, the timeline shifted again. He couldn't see it all, not yet, but in the flicker of light, he felt it. There were more choices to make, more moments to change, and Diana's echo would live on in everyone.